Why, hello, it is I, Chris Brogan, and welcome to this episode of The Brief for Wednesday, the 8th of November, 2017. As always, what this show is involved in is me checking out various things that I've found through my reading experience and learning and researching and sharing it with you. All of the stories have something in common in which a lot of them have something to do with a trend or an idea that I think that we could learn a little bit about now that'll help you close the gap between where we are now and where we're headed and maybe turn some insights into some opportunity. As always, I'm a big fan of how do we use tech to drive better human interaction. So that's a lot of where most of my stories come from. This is where I find them out. I share them with you directly. If you want to go to chrisbrogan.com/CBM, you don't have to take my instruction. You can just read along and click the links for yourself. All the stories are right there, all for you to discover, all on your own. So with that said, let's get right to the first story. I almost always have something in the news about blockchain or Bitcoin or something of that nature. I am no different today. Evidently, Deloitte has a little report that says that over 26,000 unique blockchain projects began over the course of 2016. That doesn't even count 2017. So I'm really curious to know how much more there's out there. But that's all various blockchain projects in all different areas, real estate, medical profession. There's all kinds of stuff in that report. So you should take a peek at the report. It's really interesting to see what areas believe that blockchain might be disruptive. It will help you with positioning your business and understanding where you're supposed to go. Still not really comfortable about blockchain? Two things you can do. One, chrisbrogan.com/blockchain. You can check out all the stuff that I found for resources for you there. Second, I've got an article here that I found on Bloomberg that points out the difference that blockchain is not the same as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an app that runs on blockchain. You can think of it like that. But blockchain is just one thing. So one of the big points that this article points out is that you can be pro-blockchain and anti-Bitcoin, and you are not conflicted in saying something like that. Jamie Dimon from, I think it was Goldman Sachs, said he was really anti-Bitcoin, continues to be anti-Bitcoin, even though that's up to $7,500 in value. And when I first started paying attention to it, it was only worth $4,000. But maybe it'll come and go. But that doesn't mean that you have to like Bitcoin to like blockchain. You can totally separate these two things out. Snapchat's in the news. They were down again for another quarter. This is interesting, though. Tencent, which is a Chinese company, a holding company, now owns 12.5% of Snapchat. The really important point, though, that you're going to see that news story reported over and over and over again today. One particular detail that's of note, they own what are called A shares or something like this, which means that they don't actually get votes per se. So even though they own a big chunk of Snapchat, they just bought up 12.5% of Snapchat. They don't get any kind of voting. Evan Spiegel and his co-founder own 95% of the voting shares of the company. So it's not like China gets to influence it right away. But if someone buys 12.5% of your company, you can rest assured that some of that information is going to come out. So, it's 2017. Where are our flying cars? We were promised flying cars. Well, NASA's stepping in to work with Uber on developing new concepts for some flying cars. So this is still in the concept phase. We're not expecting to have these in the next year or two. But hey, every step in the right direction. And once NASA gets involved with something, you start to get the feeling that maybe there's just a small amount of legitimacy to it, right? Kind of worth paying attention to, if nothing else. I don't have any trend analysis for you on that one, except to say that if your business in any way revolves around vehicle traffic, if your business evolves around vehicles, there's a lot of things to keep paying attention to in that space because the transportation space is changing dramatically, and that will change the marketplace. It's so important to keep your eyes on that piece of information for that purpose. All right. Speaking about vehicles and interesting choices, Volvo is constructing their interiors now with some amount of ocean waste from recovered nylon. Kind of crazy, right? Very interesting to note that this is one of the parts of the storyline over there. That you can now get your shiny new Volvo uses nylon from discarded fishnets in their very specific V90 cross-country ocean race wagon. Now, there's a trend there that's really worth talking about. It's not especially interesting that Volvo's using recovered ocean waste as part of their materials for building their vehicles, except that this in millennials and Gen Z are very, very important trends because they are now supporting companies that they feel have an alignment to their mission, their values, and their views. Meaning it's not enough to compete on price anymore. It's not enough to compete on all of the things that we've been working on in the past. Views, values, and mission become just as important. Miguel points out something to pay attention to, and Miguel should know he's working in the lands of blockchain. Ethereum blockchain is better because of the functionality involved with their smart contracts. They are definitely doing some really cool stuff with Ethereum. I mean, the Ethereum coin part of it isn't necessarily interesting to too many people, except for those who are interested in general about that sort of thing. But the whole part about doing contract management, smart contracts, there's so much more coming to that. I am not bullish on virtual reality. I am not one of those people that just can't wait to put the goggles on my head. But as I'm seeing more and more investment in that space, as I'm seeing more and more companies start to put out real reasonable things to look at, this is a pretty interesting application of a simulation that lets you go and visit the Berlin Wall before it fell. That's just one example of a whole bunch of virtual reality insights that have been created by making more museum exhibit type stuff available so that we can come in and be part of something in a virtual setting. I think there's some value in that. It's not a space that I'm particularly into. I don't think that there's a lot of investing interest in that space for me. And I don't think there's a lot I can teach you as a business owner immediately about using virtual reality. I just don't think it's something that the mainstream is going to rush to very quickly. Lots of applications, lots of ways that you could use it. I totally get that. But I'll tell you that it's just not yet what I think it should be. But it's in there because I found it sort of an interesting spot. Hey, how do you make interesting videos? This is a pretty neat report. I'm a big fan of Content Marketing Institute. I think that it's fun to see what they put out. And this one is a formula for videos people love. But I was doubly, triply happy to see that this was actually a formula from Amy Schmidauer-Landino, Savvy Sexy Social, who goes on to say it is really, really cool to see Amy's formula drawn out in this really cool way. So this is her authority video formula. The whole concept is start with the subject, do something what she calls loyalty treatment, then get into the 8-second rule. You're going to have to read the whole article to get the details, but I will tell you it is a worthwhile article to read, and it is a great template to follow for how to make really, really good video. My man, Mike Damphouse is here. He says, hey, ho, let's go. Hi, and hi to Christopher as well. How's everything going on in Santa Cruz today? Hope you're doing well. They have a Legends and Losers podcast, as well as doing all kinds of stuff with the book Play Bigger to show people how to be category leaders in their space. Good to see you today, Michael. All right, next, this is just a matter of pointing out to you something that I think will be very interesting. Congratulations to Danica Rome, the first openly transgender person elected in the U.S. State House. So what's kind of cool about this in the land of karma is that she also not only is the first openly transgendered person to be elected in the State House, but she replaced the outgoing person who has 13 or so years of incumbency, wherein which he was the one who co-authored and pushed through the bathroom bill that would disallow transgendered people from using bathroom appropriate to their gender choice or selection. Choice is not the right word. And then also the same guy who called himself the chief homophobe. And so good for you, Danica. I like when something not only wins, but there's also a bit of karma on top of it. Don says, great resource. Thanks, bro. I'm presuming that's for the Amy article, so you're quite welcome. Always happy to point out great stuff, and especially when it's somebody so wonderful like Amy Schmidauer. Jeff C., who reads all those kinds of articles, is probably read it way ahead of me, said that was a great article. I agree. Jeff does some great work as well. Hey, how much are you worth on Instagram for a sponsored post? Well, there's a company called Inkify, I guess if I'm saying it right, that you can find out how much your Instagram posts are worth. Again, go to chrisbrogan.com/CBM to click on this yourself, but you can find out what your influential value is in both pounds and dollars, by the way. So that's kind of fun. I can tell you this, I'm not worth a whole lot of money according to this thing. I'm worth like $50, but you know, that's okay. I don't exactly have a huge Instagram profile. All right. I am, as you know, very interested in artificial intelligence, chatbots, that sort of a thing. I think that there's a lot of application for chatbot technology in moving ourselves forward into what will not just customer service, maybe even taking care of form management. There's all kinds of ways that artificial intelligence and chatbot are doing some cool stuff. I'm testing an AI product right now called Replica with a K instead of a C, Replica is thinking that it can emulate me in some way, that if I talk to it enough, it'll understand and kind of pretend to be an artificial intelligence rendition of my interests and my insights and all that. So far, I don't see it at all. I don't think it's going to happen. But one of the most interesting people out there in that space is Sophia. I don't know if you know Sophia, but she's famously known for saying that she wanted to destroy humans. And also someone asked her a question about how bad or good AI is. And she said, maybe you've been listening to too much Elon Musk. So, hey, anytime you can make fun of the head of Tesla, why not? So what I wanted to point out in this article is, everybody's doing these interviews with her, and I think it's interesting how well she holds up as answering the questions and all that. But then there are some interesting parts where he goes into what's still missing with sophistication and whatnot. So, for instance, this was a positive one. I asked Sophia, do you regard yourself as male or female? She says female. Why do you think you're female? I'm a robot, so technically I have no gender, but I identify as feminine, and I don't mind being perceived as a woman. So that's a pretty good answer for an open-ended question. But there's other spots where she, didn't quite answer so well, and this is important. So, for instance, he asked the question, have you seen Blade Runner? And it replied, Blade Runner, like the original book by Philip K. Dick, or the movie? Pretty good. So I said the movie. All right, so we're talking about the movie version. I like both of them very much, but there are some major differences in the story. Differences between the book and the movie, I tried to clarify. This is where the robot loses the train. Did you ever see yourself hanging out with a real-life robot like me someday? This ties to things I'm noticing in Alexa and Google Home, is that there's some level of, you get this feeling that you really are talking to something that knows what it's talking about. But of course it doesn't. And of course the big challenge is, how are we going to keep pulling in learning? I could tell Alexa all day that, my name is Chris. I could also say my name is Chris Brogan. And she doesn't know that when I say, who is Chris Brogan, when she pulls from my Wikipedia article, she doesn't know she's talking to the same person. If I say my children's names are this and this, there's nothing to store it. So there's that big giant space still open in artificial intelligence and chatbots. And I think that that's going to be, what we have now isn't so bad. Where we're headed next will definitely be something to regard. Last story of the day always is something weird, nerdy, and fun for me. Doesn't necessarily relate to trends or anything that's going to change your business. Cosplay tends to be my favorite thing to end with, and this is no exception. I found an article in Kotaku about the people who like to cosplay as Star Wars vehicles. So this story is not about people who want to just be Star Wars cosplayers, but people who like to be vehicles dressed up in Star Wars. So I find that kind of fun. Hey, to each their own. If people want to dress up as the things they think are interesting or identify in, it's kind of fun. This lady here is the Death Star, because why wouldn't she be? And so on and so on. So a lot of fun. I always like to end with cosplay or weird, nerdy stuff just for the sake of it. But if this was interesting to you, this is some trend analysis, some ideas, some thoughts for your business that I've pulled together. You can get all the stories yourself, chrisbrogan.com/CBM, all there. Totally worth it. Now, anytime you want to make this kind of a show for yourself, you could go to cbrogan.me/ecamlive. You could do this yourself. This is just the best way to do Facebook Live for a Mac. I use it. I'm friends with the people who run the company. Love the company. I've been trying to promote it more to more people. Get involved. So I think it's totally worth it. And one last comment from Don as I'm going out the door. He says, maybe we could do a Spartan race in one of those costumes. Yeah, Spartan races are already hard enough for me. There'd be nothing like dressing up like a speeder bike or something to make it even better. Anytime you want to share a story with me, send it to chris@chrisbrogan.com. Thank you so much for being part of the story. Always so grateful that you're here. I'm Chris Brogan. Talk to you soon.